Stephen A. Smith Show. Before I get on out of here, I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves Caitlin Clark.
We are about to lose everything we believe to be true about the professional sports hierarchy. The story has focused on Caitlin Clark's mistreatment, harsh remarks, and small-minded jealousy for months. However, the world's largest bank account was keeping an eye on the newbie while the WNBA veterans were busy trying to intimidate him. We're not discussing a shoe sale. We aren't talking about a max contract extension. We are discussing a $1 billion interruption that was recently confirmed live on television by Stephen A. Smith. These days, the rumors are more than simply murmurs in the shadows of the internet. Reports are surfacing that the Saudi Public Investment Fund is preparing a hostile acquisition of women's basketball. Additionally, they have determined that Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark are their two main targets. The finest shooter of a generation would be paired with one of the league's most marketable stars in this transfer, creating a breakaway dynamic that the WNBA simply cannot afford to combat. The league was cautioned by Stephen A. Smith. He warned them that someone else would come and purchase the entire property if they failed to protect their golden goose. Well, it looks like the check has cleared. You must examine the messenger in order to comprehend why the WNBA front office is terrified by this billion-dollar rumor. Stephen A. Smith has been the loudest voice in the room when it comes to the mishandling of Caitlin Clark. SAS identified the harsh fouls and the mean girl vibe as jealousy, while other analysts tried to be polite and pretend that it was merely competitive spirit. He yelled on national television that the WNBA was mishandling the greatest gift they had ever received. He brought out the absurdity of Clark flying commercial, getting shoulder examined by Kennedy Carter, and being left off the Olympic team. But his most recent comments have shifted from criticism to a dire prediction. The market always corrects itself, Smith affirmed. He argued that you cannot keep a superstar suppressed in a system that pays her $76,000 a year when her market value is in the hundreds of millions. Smith noted that the WNBA's elite believed they could intimidate Clark into waiting her turn. But they forgot that we live in an era where player leverage is king. Smith's validation of these outside investment rumors shows one thing. He knows that allegiance ceases where the disrespect begins. He's essentially saying, "I told you so." The league treated her like an enemy. So now she might just become their rival. This is where the loyalty argument absolutely collapses, so let's take a close look at the numbers. There is a rigorous salary cap in the WNBA. As a rookie, Caitlin Clark got a 4-year agreement worth roughly $338,000 for her first year. That comes to almost $76,000. To put it into perspective, some NBA benchwarmers earn that much money every single week. The WNBA has often said, "We don't have the revenue." They allege the league has lost money for 27 years. But here is the catch. That issue was resolved in 3 months by Caitlin Clark. Attendance has increased since she was drafted. Jersey sales are through the up and TV ratings have smashed records set decades ago. She is bringing in millions of dollars for the league. In exchange, she receives an income that hardly pays the rent in a big city. At this point, it is impossible to disregard the Saudi rumor. Instead of dealing in thousands, the Saudi Public Investment Fund, PIF, deals in billions. They don't see a rookie who needs to pay her dues when they consider an asset like Clark. They witness a worldwide icon who is 99% underappreciated. The offer to Clark would not constitute a salary if the reports of a $1 billion investment in a new league or tournament format are accurate. It would be a vast empire. We are talking about an upfront payment that may eclipse the entire career earnings of every other WNBA player combined. And when you put that check next to the WNBA's $76,000 offer, there is no decision to make. But hold on, this isn't just about one player becoming wealthy. This is a well-planned geopolitical action. We have seen this identical situation play out before. And it transformed sports forever. Remember LIV Golf? For many years, the PGA Tour was the only game available. The players, the money, and the schedule were all within their control. The Saudis then intervened. They didn't try to work with the PGA. They bought the players. For simply showing up, they promised players like Dustin Johnson and Phil Mickelson hundreds of millions of dollars. The media yelled about it. They dubbed it sports washing. They said the players were greedy. However, you know what? The golfers took the money and the PGA Tour eventually had to cave and join with them. Insiders now think that women's basketball is using the exact same playbook. The WNBA is vulnerable. The players receive inadequate compensation. The travel circumstances have been awful for years, and the stars are unhappy. The setting is ideal for a hostile takeover. The Saudis are effectively going after the heart of the entire sport by pursuing Caitlin Clark. The WNBA returns to obscurity without her. With her, this new Saudi league becomes the center of the sporting world overnight. A league, however, cannot be sustained by a single individual. You need a rivalry. Both marketability and a supporting cast are essential. This is when Sophie Cunningham's rumors become relevant. Why her? Why not Brianna Stewart or Aho Wilson? The response is brutally truthful. Demographics and marketability. Sophie Cunningham has amassed a sizable fan base for both her brand and her gritty play. She is identifiable. She has the it quality that marketers adore, and she knows the social media game. The cameras find her on the sidelines for a reason. There is conjecture that the goal of this new league is to assemble a dream team of marketable talents who will appeal to a worldwide audience. Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark work well together. You have the generational potential in Clark and the charming tough as nails enforcer in Cunningham. They are the appropriate faces of the franchise to launch a new brand. Stephen A. Smith has alluded to this marketing machine many times. As a business, sports require celebrities who can sell tickets. Tickets are sold by Clark and Cunningham. It's that easy. We need to talk about why Clark would even consider quitting the league that she dreamed of playing in. It might have been simpler to turn down this $1 billion offer if the WNBA had welcomed her. But that is not what happened. From the time she stepped on the court, it was open season. We saw Diana Taurasi go on ESPN during the Final Four and warn Clark that reality is coming. It came off as bitter. The new blood seemed to be a threat to the old guard. The games followed. While the referees swallowed their whistles, we witnessed Clark being pulled up full court, hammered in the paint, and knocked to the ground. Round the World wasn't a basketball play, the Kennedy Carter hip check heard. It conveyed a message. Following that play, Stephen A. Smith erupted. He inquired where the teammates were. He inquired why the league wasn't protecting its star. The narrative became evident. The veterans of the WNBA were unwilling to transfer the torch. Their goal was to put an end to it. An departure option appears quite attractive in this hostile environment. Why stay in a workplace where your coworkers resent your success when you might move somewhere else, be treated like a queen, and make 50 times the money? However, there have previously been attempts to entice Clark to leave. Do you recall the Big Three? Ice Cube publicly promised Caitlin Clark $5 million to play just 8 games in his 3-on-3 league. $5 million. That is more than she will make in her entire WNBA career. She declined it at the time. She wanted to prove herself in the WNBA. Her goal was to pursue the title. But it was before the hazing. That was before the non-stop media circus and the absence of protection. Now, the scenario has altered and the Saudi bid is reportedly making Ice Cub's offer appear like pocket change. Here, the infrastructure makes a difference. There is more to the rumored Saudi transaction than meets the eye. It replaces the entire league. It promises the validity of a global tour, possibly with fewer games, luxury travel, and no salary cap. It addresses every single criticism the players have had for years. Ice Cube demonstrated the existence of market value. The Saudis are demonstrating that they have the resources to make it long-lasting. Let's take a moment to examine this from the viewpoint of WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelberg's office. She is facing impending disaster if these rumors are accurate. A new media rights agreement is presently being negotiated by the WNBA. They are asking for billions of dollars from networks like Disney, Amazon, and NBC. The Caitlin Clark effect is the foundation of their entire spiel. Pay us for this growth, they are telling the networks as they display the graphs of the rapidly increasing audience. However, that leverage suddenly disappears if Clark declares she is accepting a deal with a rival league. Without Clark, the networks wouldn't be spending billions on the WNBA. The Clark show is being funded by them. The TV arrangement falls apart if she departs. The revenue sharing for all the soldiers who hazed her disappears if the TV contract falls through. Is the height of irony. The veterans may have lost their own paychecks by offending the one player who brought in the money. Stephen A. Smith has hinted about this specific karma. You don't expect to continue eating if you bite the hand that feeds you. The elephant in the room needs to be addressed now. The moral police are always on full display when the Saudi PF is involved. Eliv Golf told us about it. We heard that with Ronaldo going to the Saudi Pro League, and we will hear it here. Critics will scream about human rights records and sports washing, using sports to clean up a country's image. However, Stephen A. Smith frequently points out the harsh reality that morality doesn't pay the mortgage. When NBA players take millions from China, nobody blinks. When golfers took the Saudi money, the outrage lasted approximately 6 months until everyone got used to it. Due to their prolonged financial hardship, female athletes face an even more difficult moral conundrum. When a WNBA player's present employer values her at $70,000, can we really condemn her for accepting a $10 million check? Although there may be disagreements among fans on the internet, history demonstrates that fans follow the skill. People will watch if Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark play basketball on the moon. The indignation is fleeting. The wealth passed down through generations is unchangeable. Let's examine the Sophie Cunningham connection in more detail. This suggests that the conventional city-based team format would not be used in the new league. It would likely be a tour model akin to tennis or golf. Imagine a scenario in which Clark, Cunningham, and other celebrities visit big cities like London, Tokyo, Dubai, and New York to participate in high-stakes demonstration matches or tournaments. This strategy eliminates the boring regular season games that nobody watches. It focuses exclusively on the spectacle. They ensure the social component by introducing Sophie. There is a marketable chemistry between Cunningham and Clark. They stand for an unreserved, fashionable, and talented new generation of hooper. This breakaway concept is problematic for the WNBA because it steals the casual fan. The millions of new fans who tuned in specifically for Clark will follow her wherever she goes, but the ardent WNBA fans may stick around. If she announces a partnership with Cunningham under a Saudi banner, the WNBA becomes a developmental league for the real show. The response, or lack thereof, from the parties involved lends even more credence to this rumor. We haven't heard a denial, but often when a ridiculous rumor emerges, agents quickly put an end to it to prevent distractions. Caitlin Clark's team hasn't said no. Sophie Cunningham's camp is silent. Instead of putting out the fires, Stephen A. Smith is fueling them. In the sports world, silence is usually confirmation that negotiations are happening. Until the ink dries or the season is done, they are unable to make any announcements. However, the absence of a denial says a lot. They are presumably utilizing this offer as leverage on the WNBA, or they are already packing their bags. And consider the timing. The WNBA season is exhausting. Traveling is challenging. There is a significant physical cost. As the season wears on, the attraction of a private jet and $1 billion backing becomes harder to refuse. The stillness shows that the players are now realizing they hold the cards. What does this mean for us now? The greatest change in the history of women's sports is about to occur. Stephen A. Smith has provided a clear explanation. The WNBA had a chance to embrace the future, and instead they let jealousy and mismanagement cause a gap between the league and its savior. The rumored $1 billion pact with the Saudi League, headlined by Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham, isn't just a salary. It's a revolution. It conveys the idea that someone else will compensate women fairly if the established systems fail to do so. The Sophie and Caitlin era might not be happening in a WNBA jersey. And if that's the case, the WNBA has no one to blame but themselves. It remains to be seen if she will depart. When is the question? And the sports world will never be the same once that news conference takes place and the financial sum is disclosed. Would you continue to watch the WNBA or watch a breakaway league with Clark and Cunningham? The response to the query could potentially determine the future of